This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Guns N' Roses podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. And it's hot as balls, isn't it? Like, really, I'm in the studio, I'm going to be honest, dripping sweat. Because you just can't have aircon on. You can't have a window open when you're doing audio like this. So this podcast will go as long as until I faint. So if I stop talking, chances are it's ended. Okay. So I hope you're all kind of enjoying the heat wave, as they say. In the 70s, they'll call it nice weather. Nowadays, we'd say red warning. I think in amongst the two, they're probably the same. But either way, it is overly hot. And in the UK, we are not made for it. And no, I don't think it's us that isn't made for it. I think it's the infrastructure of the UK. I don't think we have aircon. We've got an aircon unit here. We've got it right up and running. I mean, that's going to get used 7 times this year. 7 days out of 365. So like, places aren't really airconned. Cars aren't always airconned. So you just can't really get away from it at the minute. It's that kind of muggy heat in it that's all around you. So I hope you're all kind of enjoying it and not overly struggling. But here's some audio if you manage to get yourself to the gym, if you're laying face down in a cold bath. Obviously a shallow bath. Obviously that's still dangerous. But do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to, a cold scenario. That was a bad scenario to put yourself in. But if you're just laying down, do you know what I mean? Just trying to relax. Here's some audio. We can talk about England's game last night, and hopefully this will be more entertaining than that game. And then beyond that, we've got a little bit of Arsenal news. There's not a lot. I think a lot of it's going to come off the back of the kind of how the Arsenal players are doing on international duty, which includes obviously Saka getting just another little cameo and Declan Rice leaving with a lot of calf strapping. So in amongst those, I'm sure there's a lot of panic. And I think, for example, if you're English and you support England, that performance gave you a little bit of a concern. I think I can be positively England. I think I can make you feel better about that by the end of this podcast. But if you're listening from other countries, obviously that part isn't as interesting. So I don't want to go overly, because I really believe we're looking at the analytics that United States is our biggest listenership. So I do need to talk a bit more about USA. So after, I think they're on tonight. So by the end of this week on the Patreon and at the start of next week, I'll definitely be talking about the USA. And before the next iTunes and Spotify episode, England would have played and the group stages will be over. That's all over on Sunday. So by next Monday, we'll be into the round of 32, which, not to touch wood, put out bad vibes, but it feels like an extension of the group stage. But that doesn't mean you can't go out, because I think I've seen scenarios where England could indeed play Portugal. And I've seen situations where they can end up against maybe Congo or Uzbekistan. There's a couple others. But ideally, they're going to go through. USA, it's looking good as far as when you look at kind of where they're finishing and who could they face. They might have a run to the semis here that I'm not saying they will do it, but I'm saying they've got a lovely opportunity to get to a semi-final, which would be unbelievable for the USA. And I think Pochettino actually going into this said the quarterfinals, because he was asked what is the not the bare minimum, because that's a harsh way of putting it. He basically said, what is the standard for this year, like what's acceptable, and he said quarterfinals. And I think when he said it, I really genuinely in my head thought it's going to be tough. But then when you do look at the field, the way they've played so far, the way they're going to top their league, you go, do you know what, well, the round of 32 should be no issues. I don't want to, again, if you're from the USA and you're a big fan, I apologise for that comment, because that was definitely bad vibes and a bit of a Danhausen curse there. But you should be fine with 32. And it's just around the 16. And looking at the kind of potential matchups, yeah, there's a couple that could, if certain things fall a certain way. But realistically, it does feel like you're playing someone of similar level or worse for the USA. So I genuinely, when I heard it, I thought, quarterfinal, that'd be really impressive if they do make that. Because you think about it, if you were to name 8 teams, and I know it doesn't work out this way because of group stages and the way the draws laid out and stuff. But if you thought of the top 8, you said Brazil, Argentina, England, France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, um, probably someone really big I've missed. Even Norway this year, I think. I think they've got a nice, obviously they've stolen the hearts of people just watching, but they're also playing well, and Haaland now, Odegaard for the first time. There's something interesting. But those 8, and then on top of those, you have got the likes of, I'm going to add USA, I'm going to add Canada, I'm going to add Mexico, all very good teams. We've got Japan, a very good team. We've got Croatia, very good team. So that next level of 8, which you would imagine would make up the round of 16, if the USA were to take away any of those 8 slots I mentioned, maybe Norway, then you'd be like, okay, well, so I think it'd be a real feat if they made the quarters. So if they were to make the semis, I think it would be huge, especially in their own back garden. So really good there. But we will talk a bit of England here. The game itself, I have a theory on. There was a lot obviously around the pre-match, Thomas Partey shaking hands and things like that, and I think in the end Jed Spence didn't shake his hand. It's a bit of a political minefield. Obviously, it's way above my pay grade. But each to their own. Do what they need. I don't know enough about it, even though I'm an Arsenal fan. I try to stay in the confines of just football and all that kind of stuff. I know Hakimi's in a similar boat as Thomas Partey. I know there's been past people in a similar boat. The conversation around it was huge, I guess, because England were playing them, and England really do, because I'm sure there wasn't a massive conversation about, was everyone going to shake Hakimi's hand for Scotland? I don't remember seeing that. So I don't know if it's just the English game and then they make a... And I think some of these things really do lead to what the kind of performance you get. And obviously, I'm not saying, because obviously football is not as important as the victims of that situation and the ongoing, obviously, charges. But the media do a really good job of, one, leaking the team sheet, and also getting things involved that you don't need to be bringing involved. They were trying to catch people like Dan Burn out this week saying, what are you going to do? And he was just, I'm not going to answer that, am I? I'm just, And then all of them know that they're going to be, now cameras are going to be on them. The cameras shot back from the lineups to see who's going to shake hands. They create something around the game that, whether it's warranted or not, it creates a distraction. And the fallback, and this is what I've talked about in regular life with people, where everyone has their mountain to die on, their hill to die on, and you can't really have all of them. You know what I mean? There's people that will be very pro, for example, be a vegan, that kind of thing, and I completely understand their argument. But they will tweet that off of an iPhone, and you think, well, so was that hill not one you were bothered about? So you kind of, you're picking your battles and these kind of things. But as a whole, we get through this whole kind of thing they've created behind the match, and we get to the match. And in the actual lineups, I think Jed Spence, who obviously became quite a talking point, obviously that pre-match stuff, and then the video of Tuchel shouting Jed repeatedly because he was far too infield, and I think he told him give and go, where he kind of like put his foot on it, came backwards, and then headed infield. And then shortly after that got hooked, which is interesting. But he came in for Nico O'Reilly, and again, later in this game there were substitutions that I think some of them were a little odd, and the timing were odd, and the positionings were odd, and we'll talk about that. But Nico O'Reilly was a part of the team that did look more likely to get a goal later in the game. But Jed Spence came in for him. I think Gahey came in for Stones to go alongside Konza, with obviously Pickford behind. Reece James kept his right back. Elliot Anderson, Declan Rice and Bellingham kept the midfield, as they did the other day, and the front three was the same. It was Gordon, Madueke and Kane. So a couple changes there, and I understand. I do think there's a lot of people naturally see that, and they that isn't our best lineup. It's like, yeah, but we'd also won the first game, which was definitely the hardest game. which allows us to platform to start resting players. And it sounds ridiculous, but with this many teams in a World Cup, one win really gets you through. And ideally, England aren't sitting there thinking, yeah, I'd love to come third and get through. But 3 points does get you through. So, picking up that 1 point, us and Ghana on the same amount, Croatia on 3, and then Panama on none. So it's all to play for, but we've also got our easiest tie last. So we've kind of worked from toughest to least. Whereas Croatia and Ghana are now playing each other for who comes second or top or third. So you can understand resting players or maybe just turning around. And again, you take a massive squad and you want to use as much of it as possible, but you also need to get rhythm because you're playing so soon after the last game. But I don't mind that. I think the centre backs, I think Konza, Stones, and Gahey, I think any one of the two of the three where we kind of go, all right, yeah, I'm happy with that. I think as far as fullback, I think Jed Spence had a really good cameo, so I understand him coming in. But I think Nico O'Reilly is just one of these guys that he's appeared like Lewis Skelly the year before. I think you go with the hot hand. He's a very intelligent player. He's a really good player. And he just does certain things that you really want to happen, and he does it. Reece James is a very good right back. We don't really have any depth over there, so he's going to play a lot. The midfield, this is where I'm a little bit interested. I think against Croatia, I got that team because I think that is our strongest midfield three. But I just think Rice and Elliot Anderson are so similar of players that playing both of them, and then Bellingham's a type of 10 that goes looking and goes kind of, a lot of maverick tackles, closing down, getting involved in stuff, dribbling with the ball. He's not a guy that's necessarily going to bind it with passes. He can, but he's not known for that, And I think in the end, you have three kind of workhorses in the midfield, which was, and you'd think back to Klopp's Liverpool, for example. And I think this team's trying to have that kind of feel, that kind of heavy metal counter-attack kind of style, especially with the pacey wingers like Gordon and Madueke. And with Kane dropping in, so you kind of have a 10 that goes beyond him, like Bellingham, or Rodgers is a perfect example of someone else who would do that. So I do get it, but there isn't quite enough in there for me to kind of retain the ball. And against the bigger nations, I am more concerned now in the sense that if a team, went like, similar to Arsenal in Champions League final with PSG, that I know that it came down to penalties and that's 50-50, but they were the better team on the day. I still disagree to the extent that people bring up that, we were rubbish that day. We were very good. We just did something that we thought would beat the best team in the world. And it nearly worked. It didn't. With England, I understand we won't want to keep the ball against Spain. But you need those, I don't think of I think Declan Rice is great set pieces, great engine, great tackler, smart player, consistent, kind of steady. Elliot Anderson, I think of all of that except the set pieces. Do you know what I mean? I think he's, and I wouldn't either put both of them in the category of a really good passer. And I wouldn't put Bellingham in there. I wouldn't put Madueke in there. I wouldn't put Gordon in there. I think Kane's an unbelievable passer. And then when you've got the centre-backs, I think Gay's a good passer. I think Konza is fine. Stones is a great passer. Reece James is a great passer. Jed Spence not a great passer. But O'Reilly is. And when you think of that, and you've got an 11 there, take away the goalie of 10, you've got two great, in the actual starting lineup there, a great passer, and then two good passers. And two of the good passers are right back and centre back. The great passers to centre forward. And I just worry about that. I don't think that you need a bit more in there. Rodgers, Eze, and I think Rodgers is a bit closer to Bellingham than he is Eze. I think Eze's a great option. People really do just not understand that the year he's had, because I seen more saying, I don't know why he went and all these kind of things. He's not good enough. He's way off the level. This is the guy who just played in the Champions League final. This is a guy who just won the league and he was our most regular 10 in that team. This is the player that won the FA Cup and the Community Shield at the start of the season. This is a guy that's been so consistent for Palace over the last few years, and he continued it into ours, scoring a hat-trick in his debut season from 10. These are not normal things, He played in the Carabao Cup final. If he plays in a World Cup final, he plays in every cup competition you could possibly do, and no one's ever done it in England in 12 months, in a 12-month space. No one ever. He'll be a history maker, and he's someone who can unlock a low block, and that's what I'll get into next, because the way they set up, I have no qualms with Ghana, the way they set up and the way they chose to defend. They defended great. This is, as an Arsenal fan and doing this podcast, this is something I've talked about a lot. These low blocks, you need a bit of magic, a shot from range, a bit of dribbling, a perfect pass at the right time, a certain amount of pressure, someone stepping out and doing something that just is not expected, because a lot of defending like that is based on probabilities and numbers. If you cross the ball this many times, we're going to clear 9 out of 10. So as long as that 10th one doesn't happen, we'll be good. So that's the consistent pressure part of it. Keep loading that box up, keep putting that ball in there, and eventually one's going to get in on the right head at the right time. You can't keep missing it, or they can't keep defending it. The other one is shoot from range. First half, no shots on target. The other one is great passing. We don't have that. Moments of magic. Yeah, Madueke beat his man a lot in that first half and created something, but there were kind of headers where we were getting under it. I think Elliot Anderson had one. I think Rice had one. But nothing really to write home about. You need someone popping up from a position that they can't defend. We talked about PSG and how they rotate Mendes and Hakimi in amongst it all as like these constant rotations that you can't defend, because the only way to break a low block is to confuse them. Because if you're in your positions and you're in your correct positions, it can be defended. Whereas if we did it with Timber would like kind of end up next to Gyökeres, and we're like, that's when even if it's not him that breaks it, a player then goes, oh, I need to follow him because he's in the wrong place. Then all of a sudden someone's left free, that creates a chance. Then it's like a domino effect. You have to kind of put a cat amongst the pigeons, in any other way. And I think the team we put out last night just didn't have any of the different attributes you need to do that to a low block. The only thing we did have is shots from range, but they just weren't releasing the ball. They weren't, and again, they did a really good job of blocking. There's a few blocked good shots in that first half. But overall, I thought, all right, well, second half, they're going to come out similar to last game against Croatia. I thought the first half was kind of okay, even though it was 2-2, but the second half was just different level. And I thought we just saw a lot of the same. Eventually, we did get a shot on target. I think it was Gordon. We started to create a couple chances. Madueke hit it over. All these kind of things. And then it wasn't until we started making changes. And I think he took off... He brought on Rodgers and Eze, I want to say, for... I think it was Anderson and Bellingham. I think. So basically going from two, double pivot to a single pivot with Rice. And I get that, that seems like a smart thing to do. And Rodgers and Eze give you something else, because we do not need the two double pivot, especially when a team don't want to counter attack, or they do eventually, and we'll get to that. But you just got passengers. You've got 6 at the back essentially, and you're trying to break a team down, and they've got 11 behind the ball. You're just outnumbered. Because if one of our fullbacks is high and the 2 centre backs and the other fullbacks are low, the 2 other midfielders are low, the goalie's low, that's 6 of our 11. So only 5 players are attacking against all 11 of theirs in their own box. 5 on 11, you're not going to get things done, and you have to overcommit. You have to take risks. That's the point. That's the chess match of football. So yeah, they made those changes, which I didn't mind it, but I think Rice looked knackered, so I think I would have gone with Rice off instead of Anderson. I think he did that last game, so I think he was probably just rotating that kind of concept. Then he brought on Saka, and he brought on O'Reilly. This is when I thought it changed. Then Madueke went to the left, I believe. Yeah. And Saka came on. And Madueke switched spots, and I think Gordon went off, and so did Jed Spence. This is, again, there was a moment there where if we do end up buying Rodgers, there was Rice as the 6, and the 4 ahead of him before Kane were Saka, Madueke, Rodgers, and Eze. And I was like, my word, that it could be our front 5 behind Gyökeres next year, or like our 5 in midfield behind Gyökeres. And we're seeing it. And luckily, it was the best portion of the game. Maybe not actually. Maybe the last portion when we took Madueke off for Rashford. But Rashford could also be in the Arsenal team. So either way, it was weird to see. And obviously, it's not a great idea because they didn't break down Ghana, who are ranked 164th in the world. So it's not ideal, but it's different. It's so different, isn't it? Like The tempo's different. Declan Rice is playing at 50%, and that is a real worry for England, I think. I don't know if they're actively resting. I really almost get that feeling like they're resting in this group stage to kind of just get through, recover, and then they'll kind of go hell for leather once we're through. But there's a few things that are worrying me. But later in the game, there, I think Saka comes on, shows instantly that he's a class above a lot, and there's a couple of good chances. He has that shot that the goalie makes a really good save. Shortly after that, O'Reilly hits the bar, comes out, and Kane has an easy, not an easy, but a volley from 6 yards out, and he skies it. And the commentator said, "Oh, Kane's cleared it," which I thought was great commentary. Rashford was dangerous. I thought Saka was dangerous. The next game, I know, and that's what I was kind of leading with a little bit. Ends 0-0. Great result. I will get to some of the Ghana moments and what could have been, because there could have been a couple of reds for England, I think, and I feel like no one's being overly conversational about it, which is very odd, but which always comes back to the if this was Arsenal war. I understand it's a long tournament. You have to kind of manage the tournament. I assume Saka is fit enough to play. He just doesn't want to cause a problem. So I guess the way he's doing it is once we get to the round of maybe 16, touch wood again, we don't go out to 32. I've got a feeling there's a chance Saka doesn't start a game until the round of 16. But that would be great because then he's in very light training. He's doing 10, 15-minute cameos every 5-6 days. And from the Champions League final where again, he got taken off at the end of the game, near the end of the 90 minutes. So it's not like he was being ran into the ground every 3 days with 90 plus minutes like he has been over the years. He's been quite like active recovery. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's been good, and I think this is the best thing for him. And then round of 16, you start him, and at 60 minutes you can take him off, and then maybe the quarterfinals you can take him off. And this is, by the way, if you get this far. Semi-final he might have to play 90 minutes. Final he might have to play 90 minutes. But the way they're building up, I think, is good. And then when you think of Stones, I think he's in a similar boat. He's not a fully fit centre back, so getting 75, 80 minutes out of him in the first game, getting 0 minutes now, then maybe the next one he gets 60 minutes. You can get yourself into a round of 32, and you're like, oh, he's only played 130 minutes since. And again, he hasn't played much this season, so this is another issue. Rashford had a knock, so him getting just a little cameo after playing the other day. We're keeping people fresh, kind of keeping the powder dry a little bit, I think, which is the smart way to do it. With that, sometimes you get games like that, because I think if you start that game with Stones instead of Konza, because I think Gahey and Stones, O'Reilly instead of Spence, that 3-man City out of the 4, I think makes sense. Reece James, and then you have Declan Rice on his own with Rodgers and Eze, and then the left is Rashford, right is Saka, Kane up front. If they start that team last night, and it's a must-win, I think they win at 3 or 4-0. I really, truly do. So I think it was circumstantial. It is interesting that this is our 4th tournament in a row that our second group stage we've drawn 0-0, 0-0, 1-1, 0-0. So it is like a running theme. There is a bit of a clockwork to it. And we usually start very strong. So usually like a 6-0 win or a 4-2 or something. And then it's into that draw and you go, oh no. And then we go to the last game, you win it and everyone goes, all right. Then you get to you know what I mean? I think this is a regular occurrence for England. In the game though, there was some interesting moments for Ghana. There was that one where he ran through and Pickford came out. Neither of them got to the ball and they just kind of clattered into each other. I truly thought that was going to be a red card and a free kick to Ghana. Red card for Pickford, but the free kick to Ghana, sorry. And the ref gave it the other way and I thought, oh, okay, fair enough. I think the ref overall was really poor. I mean, sometimes, when you just watch football and sometimes you do watch it and you go, oh my God, that's a bad tackle. You watch it back and you go, he doesn't go near him. And you go, oh, ref was right. You know what I mean? Like, that does happen. But there's almost like a cadence, like a body cadence to the way in which sometimes when you've watched enough football, you go, yeah, that's a foul. Anytime that happened, he wouldn't just not give it for what you expect. He just gave it the other way. Like almost like when a ref's got it in his head that he's going to be like strong in a certain way, and you can almost feel the agenda that he's got. And it wasn't to one particular team. It was just anytime you thought something was going to get given, he gave the opposite, and you thought, oh, he's trying to make a name for himself. I don't know, but that one was interesting. But once I saw the replay, it really did look like the guy. I think in reality, I think he shut his eyes and just hoped for the best and just took out Pickford. And I think Pickford was trying to run to his right, which was the Ghana player's left, just to almost get well out of the way and not get sent off. They end up running into each other. But the way the legs of the Ghana player was, I can't remember who it actually was. It wasn't Ayew. It wasn't Williams. I can't remember who it was. But he goes over the ball on Pickford. He just happens to miss his shin. But if he doesn't, I think it's a really bad... It's a potential red card on the Ghana player. So that one I'm a little... I do kind of think, I've seen a lot of people online kind of saying that we were lucky. And I genuinely thought that immediately. I thought it was a red and a free kick. But once I watched it back, I thought, ooh, that Ghana player's lucky. I really thought he's lucky. The other one was right near the end. And this was the worry overall, was I think Ghana just kept getting in. Every time they went forward, they'd get in. But Konzo tried to make a recovery tackle. He doesn't get any of the ball. He gets the player down. And I think what happens is the ref actually, and then I think Semenyo has like the rebound or whatever. He gives it offside, but I don't know if they checked it because it was a clear penalty and a red card to Konza. But I never saw any check on that offside because if they checked it, it was onside. It's a penalty. So I'm just going to look it up now. I'm going to see if there's. How did VAR miss? It was straight away Football 365. How did VAR miss blatant Ghana penalty after foul by Konza? See if they've got any still images for me. Do I want to enjoy your personal ads? Track cookies, brilliant. I can't imagine because I'm looking at it now. He's kind of both his legs are off the ground. He's about hip height, trying to pull. Almost, he's got his arms around the guy's hip, and then his legs are up there as well. Doesn't look good even in still image. Just trying to see if maybe there's something going on here. I don't know, because I definitely saw the ref give it as offside, but when they showed it back, it felt like he was very much on the side. I'm trying to find a still image. I've got a still image here actually from X. He is definitely. Sometimes there's a bit of a camera trickery. And the camera angle doesn't help, but you can almost see that the forward's back leg is on the line of the pitch and the other one's kind of just there. And then just nearer the picture, I think Gahey's down here. He's in the same exact stance, but his back leg's about half a yard in front of that same line. So unless that guy's head is far forward, but like optically, you look at it, he's clearly onside. There's a very small chance, because they have automated thingies, that they did it and said it was offside, so it didn't really matter. So they just the game continued. But for me, I think here there was there's a tweet. There should have been a penalty Ghana after Konza lunged at Adu with flying tackle. The tackle was onside and Konza did not get a touch. I don't think there's any confirmation he was definitely onside. It looks miles on, like he looks like he's on. I definitely won't discredit that, but I wonder, because of the grey area of VAR, and this is what I've talked about all season, or the last 3-4 years. The problem is, if they in the headset say, was that a penalty, and he says no, which he didn't give the penalty, that's the first indication. And if they say it's off, blah, blah, and they're going, because we've heard the audio now, he's running, he's going, no foul, and then somebody has to back up, no foul. He's probably got a linesman saying offside, and then he goes, looks over, cool, offside, gives it offside. And the only thing I'd say is, I guess then VAR would then look at the penalty and say, there's a potential it could be a penalty. But they don't want to overrule the ref. And with that offside, I wonder if they don't even check the offside because they feel quite strong that, like, do you know what I mean? Like, is the ref going, no, I feel strong that wasn't a penalty. So there's no point going backwards and finding out the first bit to find out the second bit, if that makes sense. So I wonder if it's something like that. But for me, it was a penalty, a red, and it was onside. I'd like more clarification on that just to find it, because I feel bad. I don't feel bad for Ghana. But you kind of, decisions like that are quite interesting because that would put Ghana on 6 points. Us on 3. We're in a situation where we could meet Portugal immediately, and this could be that. Moments like that in a game could be the difference between us going out around the 32 or Ghana going out around the 32. So, it was interesting. I'll just say that it's interesting. Um, but overall, people were so down on it. It was really tedious. It was boring. And it was everything I said earlier. There's about probably 4 or 5 different attributes you need to break down the low block. I thought we put nothing out there until the last 10 minutes. I think once Saka's on there, he's not just a byline winger. He's going to come inside. He's going to knit play together. He's going to have shots. That's immediately 2 things that you want that we didn't have the other 80 minutes. You had the O'Reilly chance where he hits the bar. Perfect example of rotations. They don't expect the left back to be there behind Harry Kane trying to header the ball. Do you know what I mean? That's how you dislodge a very organised defence. You got to put the fly in the ointment. Do you know what I mean? You want them to go, okay, he's crossed it. We're all in our shape. Unless that cross is, 100% perfect and the header is exactly perfect, this isn't a goal. And they'll take those probabilities because to get that 100% and 100%, it's very hard. So then you have to look elsewhere and you look at a shot. It could deflect. It falls in someone's path. These are the bits of slices of luck you need as well. But we weren't taking shots. We were only crossing. I think we did I think it was 12 crosses in the whole game. And it felt like a lot when you watched it, didn't it? But, the probabilities of doing that many crosses and the chances you need for that to be perfect, it's just very unlikely that's going to work out for you. So all these things. And then late in the game, O'Reilly doing the rotation, Saka doing the passing and the shooting. Rashford cutting inside and shooting, and also doing in-swinging crosses. Later in the game, Rodgers was crashing the box with Eze, as opposed to just Bellingham. So it's an extra man in there. These are all things that would have changed the game had they started or come on much earlier, and I think there probably would have been a goal. But we didn't, and I'm not down on it because we've learned over the last couple of years, if professional football players at that level, including Ghana's level, because it's a team that has Semenyo, Ayew, Partey, Inaki Williams. There's a lot of well-known players in that team that play high-level European football and have done for a long time. So it's not the worst team, and same with the counter-attacks. If you give them chances, they will do it. But when you get back to this, it's the reason why people found this season so stagnant. This wasn't just the Premier League. It was worse in the Premier League than ever, but it was worse. It was just as bad all around Europe. Was when you convince 16 athletes in a squad at that level of football to be organised for 95 minutes and go, just as long as you do this, you will get a point. They can get themselves up to it and they can do it and they can actually be switched on the whole time. This never used to be, it never used to exist because a couple of players wouldn't. They'd switch off. They'd go and do something. Now players are happy, and we've seen it in the Premier League, to go, no, I'd be just as happy with a 0-0. And even if there is a chance for us to counter-attack, I'm all right if I don't. Because sometimes you need them to counter-attack to open up the space to actually score. So teams now are almost like, no, I'm happy with the draw. And you get stagnant football, and you get teams that go, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you bait me, I'm not going to take the hook. I'm going to watch you. And if you don't do anything spectacular or, put certain types of bait in the water, you're not going to get a catch. It's just not going to happen. And England didn't do it. And that's why it's not as worrying, because as you go through, especially past the round of 32, you're not really going to face teams that are going to do that. Portugal aren't going to do that. They're going to go for you and you're going to go for them. Similar to the Croatia game. There's no team that I think are going to make it to the quarters that do that style of football that Ghana do, that we're going to come up against. So you're going to be in a duel. You're going to be in a back and forth. You're going to be in a strike-off, really, with all the teams. And I think we can, when we've got Rashford, Saka, and Kane with Bellingham just behind, and maybe a Rodgers or an Eze next to him, I think that we match up for every team in the world football. I really do. And so, for the first time, because with England, we kind of almost become the Ghana team in the round of 16 and try to make our way to the final. I think it's the first time where we can go, let's go toe for toe. And we might actually just outscore them because we actually have the firepower now. We have the quality of football. We have the quality manager. We have all that. And we might sink goals. We might be odd on the counter-attack. Like if that was Arsenal and we were that lackluster in front of goal in a Premier League game and the other team should have got a couple goals because we just didn't defend it great and we could have given away goals, I'd be seething. But with England, I'm not, because it's an upward hill, isn't it, with tournament football. That once you've done that match, you move on. Because, for example, against Panama, they're going to try and do the same thing, I think, but they don't have the quality of football players or the quality of manager that Ghana do, and the experience. And that England team will have too much firepower to just overwhelm them. But once you get beyond that point, if a top level team wanted to do it, it would be impossible unless someone really stepped up and did something. But even then, it has to be a gamble. You have to decide: are we going to pop two more players forward to try and get this, or do you think are they bluffing, or are they actually going to counter attack? It's that, and that's the chess of football, and that's also a really fun part of football. And so I'm not as down on the performance as some. I think they need to do more, but I think they're also managing certain minutes that made it more difficult. But I thought the decisions of the type of players, like I said earlier, I think there were 3 good passers of a football or better in that whole 11, and that includes the goalie. And I don't think that exact team does that much better against Panama. I think it wins 1 or 2-0, but I don't think it's unbelievable because I think you really do have to be able to pick a pass and be quick and all that kind of stuff and have rotations, and there just wasn't in that team. It reminded me a little bit that front 3 of when we do Gyökeres, Madueke, and Martinelli with Gordon, Kane, and Madueke himself. It felt like that, and when we used to do that, but we play like Partey, Rice, Zubamendi, but then we'd play like Odegaard. Or even Ezra, actually, because Ezra's a different type of player than Odegaard. Odegaard will bind. He's a good passer. He'll bring people in. Whereas Ezra is more like to shoot or try something in the build-up. And that's what England was like. It was like, that's what Bellingham's like. He kind of goes one direction. He's vertical. So I just thought I think it was a mixed match of stuff that caused that to happen. I'm not concerned. The counter-attack and the lack of quality defending slightly worried me as far as trying to win the whole tournament. But like I said earlier, I think the plan is, once we're through to the knockouts, let's go toe-for-toe with everyone and just see what happens. Because that messaging came from the first game with Tuchel seemingly telling the players, go out on your shield, go lose the way you want to lose, don't lose like that. Which is very much the ethos of like a Klopp or Tuchel himself, where it's, we're going to win it, yeah. But, like, for example, Ancelotti's like that. That some of the top managers have been like this because they take over like Brazil, and he's not telling them like, let's be careful. He's going out and go, be Brazil, go express yourself and win the game. And if they score, cool, score more. That's what most international football is. And France are a very good side overall, but I mean they also allow other teams a lot of chances because their theory is, well, we got Mbappe, Elise, and Doué, and Dembele. And it doesn't really matter if you score 6 because we will score 7 or 8 because we're that much better than you. And I think that's the plan with England. I really do. I don't think you're going to see that kind of clamming up against better teams. I think because Panama's going to be interesting. If we do get Portugal, I don't think we're going to see a Southgate type defensive unit that are scared to go forward. I really think it's going to be similar to the Croatia game where they're just going to go for it. And yeah, Portugal might score more. But I think it's the first time in our probably 20 years plus that we have the firepower to play anyone. I think France probably have the best firepower, but I think we don't match them fully. But I mean, Dembele, Bellingham, Kane, Mbappe, Saka, Doué, Elise, Gordon. Maybe that's the moment. That's the moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I think it's not as far off as it's ever been. And France's midfield is not great. Rice and Anderson are better. So I just think we actually have an opportunity, and I think their plan is not to be kind of smart and adapt to each one. I think their plan is to let's just score goals and see what happens. So, which will make for an exciting time, albeit we just saw the most boring game, maybe of the whole tournament. So there's that. As for Rice, there was a weird moment that he's running back towards his own goal, towards the corner flag, and it almost looked like the guy caught him. And he came up like lame, didn't he, for a little bit afterwards. And then he's left the mix zone last night with a massive amount of strapping up his calf. But for me personally, someone who's watched Rice a lot of the last few years, he is not playing like Declan Rice. And this happens sometimes because, for example, no matter how good a team you put out in a Carabao Cup, if you put the first Arsenal team out against Grimsby at the Emirates, sometimes they win 1-0. And you can tell it's because the tempo isn't right. they're not playing at 10s, they're playing at their 7 and 8s just because they think that's enough to get over the line. And they can't get it out of their brain that it's the Carabao Cup. Because if Grimsby were now in the Premier League, and when we played Leeds last year, they're rampant. But now you play Leeds a week later in the Carabao Cup, the tempo's different. And I know it's set in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup in the last few years, but the Champions League and the Premier League is almost like they play at a different level. And I think with England, especially in the group part, I think players see it like the Carabao Cup, and I kind of get why, because there's so many teams now. You're playing teams like Panama, and I think England felt pretty confident they were clearly going to go through, and I think they will. Well, I think they have gone through. Technically, got 4 points. It just depends on where 1, 2, or 3. But I do think they play at a different level, and then I think once you get to the knockouts, you almost need a big boy. I don't want a big boy in 32, but you almost need a Norway, Portugal, someone that is very good and could win the tournament themselves, but you need them to, like, iron sharpens iron. It sets them up and makes them play at a certain level, and we have the players that if they're playing at 10s, it's going to be a 10 out of 10 performance. But I feel like until then they kind of do this weird, like, I think we're better than them, so I'm going to pull a little bit out of my performance because I think I can leave more in the tank for another day. But the problem with the knockout tournaments is there might not be another day, so you almost have to. But that's the management of a tournament. It's going to be interesting to see. Other than that, Ronaldo finally got 2 goals. He got his couple goals. He said, "I'm back," down the camera, which is very interesting, and also proof positive that it really was bothering him. They got their win. I think it was 5-0. And what I quite liked was the Mendes free kick. Ronaldo set up, it was on the edge of the box. It never looked like he was going to take it because it's far too close for his range. Mendes is standing there. It goes on for ages. There's loads of issues with the wall. There's all these things. And Ronaldo's selling it like, mad that the ref's taking so long. He's doing his breathing techniques. He's going to smack it. And the only way he's going to hit it is up and over the wall to that kind of right-hand side because it's dead central, the free kick. But Mendes is just standing to his right, and as soon as he goes to run up, Mendes just runs over and just kind of curls one along the floor to the other side, and the goalie's rooted because he's so convinced that Ronaldo's taking it, and he has to go over the wall because Ronaldo's not going to hit it that side otherwise. I thought it was just really good. I think it's one of my more favourite goals so far, just because I like that kind of confusion. And I mean, it being a set piece is very indicative of me being an Arsenal fan, but we'll move on from that. But other than that, looking across things, because I will be back on air in a couple days where I think by the time I'm on air, there'll be 4 groups will be done, which is such a kind of mad concept, isn't it, that we're already nearly at the knockout of the World Cup 2026 in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. I'm stalling. That's why I said all that. So yesterday, since we last spoke, actually, I'll say, we had France. It's a really lovely thing going on with the Golden Boot, isn't it? They beat Iraq 3-0 with that big weather delay. I think Mbappe got another 2. So he's really working his way up those all-time goal scorers in the World Cup, and he's doing it at such a young age. The problem is the guy who's now top, Messi, is already on 5 goals and Mbappe's on 4. And the fact he's doing this at this age, at 39, is just unbelievable. When he should have scored a hat-trick, he took a Champions League final type penalty. He could have got back-to-back hat-tricks, which is just terrifying because people say, he's in MLS, he's not who he used to be. And watching Ronaldo yesterday, I really realised, Ronaldo's not who he used to be. He does look tired. He's a yard off of it. He makes some odd decisions. He's consistently offside before people pass it to him. So Messi is just, we're witnessing something that's just unheard of, I'd say. So we have, let's have a look. I'm just seeing what we've missed. We spoke on Monday. I just realised it's Wednesday. I thought it was Monday. We're going to talk in 2 days. Oh my god! I've clicked a YouTube video. When was that? What game was that? Oh my word! I can't play. Oh my! YouTube keeps opening up. I don't have a clue what's going on here. So we had the 0-0 with Ghana. In the night, we had Croatia beating Panama 1-0 with a 54-minute goal, which I think Croatia would be very chuffed with it because I think they're getting a little bit unnerved. Colombia beat Congo 1-0, which is interesting because this could have ramifications to who we play. with that as well was the Portugal 5-0 with Ronaldo's 2. Before that, we had the big Algeria 2-1 over Jordan. Norway 3-2 over Senegal. Very fun match. Ismail Assar doing his best to stop Haaland, but he can't. Haaland also on another, is that 3 goals now? All the top players are. I've never seen a World Cup where we have so many top players playing, but secondly that they're all performing at the level they are, and the visual of Odegaard hitting that drum and the rowing in the crowd and the players, I think that's one of the all-time World Cup moments. And then the night that we podcast on Monday, we had Argentina. That was the Messi moment, and then Mbappe just after that 3-0. That was when I was doing a very dangerous match at Coyote Ugly in Cardiff. Yeah, so it's really cool to kind of see this kind of, I don't know, dare I say the Golden Boot is shaping up as good as the tournament. And I just don't think I've seen it. I want to see Golden Boot. I want to see who's got it. Messi's on 5. Haaland's on 4. Mbappe's on 4. Undav's on 3. David's on 3. Kane's on 2. Ronaldo's on 2. But I mean, Messi's got 5 after 2. And, you know, the all-time one as well is just madness, isn't it? Like, when you actually... And if you look at the last couple of years, look, in 2022, Mbappe won it with 8 goals. They went to the final. And he scored 3 in the final. So that means up until the final, he'd scored 5 goals. Messi's there after 2. Harry Kane was the top goal scorer in 2018. He had 6. We went to the semi-final. So, just, I don't know. And then before that, in 2014, was James Rodriguez with 6. 2010 was Thomas Muller with 5. And I remember everyone raving about how good Muller was that year. 2010's top goal scorer, Messi has the same after 2. They went to the World Cup final. I think they won it that year, Thomas Muller. So it just shows you like the madness. And people at the end, I'm sure, will say there's an asterisk because of the amount of games they're going to play. But I mean, they, you know, at this stage in any World Cup, there would have been 2 games. You know what I mean? So it's just unbelievable, and really enjoying that kind of heating up. As far as Arsenal goes, just trying to keep an eye on these injuries. And like I said the other day, we're trying to watch people go out to try and piece together a team that could potentially start for us next season would be delightful. So I'm just kind of keeping my eyes peeled for injuries and keeping my eyes peeled for transfers. Nothing's really changed. It looks like that Monga deal is going to be done with Leicester. Just got to get a fee agreed. I do believe he will go back out on loan. So an exciting signing, but maybe one for the future. Well, he is one for the future, but maybe not something to get excited about for directly next season. The other ones were Tazoles. I think I'm getting better at saying that. Looks very likely. I do think it's heating up for a problem post-World Cup with just the prices that are being bounded around. Tonali might be 100 million to Spurs, and he's not 100 million. And if he's 100 million, Rodgers is 110 million. Slightly different players, but you do start to think we're going to get priced out. Maybe we're going to have to look abroad. And I think that's why they're looking at the Greek lad, and I think that's why they're looking at maybe Boadi, who was a lot quieter in the second game. And again, that's not a bad thing for us. Just, you know, if that goes from 60 million to 80 million, it might bring it back down to 60 million. But we might have to look elsewhere. You think last year we looked at Isak, we were very confident on that. It was 100, 105 million to get it done. Ended up being 120 or was it 105? Cannot remember, but it was going to be around that kind of fee. Instead, we go and get Gyökeres for 55, and it allows us another 60 million to go get Eze. So instead of just getting one Isak, we got an Eze and a Gyökeres. So I think we might have to be smart with it, and the only way to do that is to go abroad and went to the Portuguese league to get a centre forward. So as much as I would love Rodgers, I wonder if there's an element that we get priced out of that. It will help if obviously he creates a little unrest and asks to leave. Because no, I don't think anyone is going to pay 105 million for Rodgers, but I also didn't think anyone would pay 100 million for Tonali. So it is interesting. Will they eventually just go, well, that's who we want, so we can pay it? Because we can. PSR wise, we're looking good. So that time will tell on that. So we'll get to more of this next week. Hopefully, in another 5-6 days here on iTunes and Spotify, give us a 5-star review. There will be more information about some of these signings or sales, but there's at the minute very quiet on the Arsenal front. World Cup will continue. England are back on Saturday. I think the USA are today, I want to say, which will be quite fun because that'll be their group. I think they're already top, so I don't think it matters too much. I think today we have 2 8 o'clock games, which is Switzerland, Canada, Bosnia, and Qatar. So Canada want to win their group. Then I believe after that we've got Group C finishing off, which is Scotland, Brazil at 11, and Morocco, Haiti, which would be, again, Scotland, Brazil. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'd love to stay up and watch that. Time will tell if I can stay up for that one. Then after that, we've got tomorrow in the night at 2 a.m. We've got South Africa versus Korea and Czech Republic versus Mexico. And at 9 o'clock, it's Curacao and then Ivory Coast, and then Ecuador versus Germany. And then at midnight, the end of the Sweden, Japan, and Tunisia versus Netherlands. And USA are on at 3 a.m. Thursday night into Friday morning. At the same time against Turkey, at the same time as Paraguay, Australia. So USA will want to win that, I think, because head-to-head they've beaten Paraguay and Australia. That I believe, even if they end up on the same points, they're through top. So I think they're topped anyway. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see as teams start appearing in brackets where we can go, ooh, if we win this, that means they do this and they go here, and that makes it harder. It'll become even more exciting, I'd say. So look forward to that. I'll be on the Patreon at the end of the week to talk a bit more about the World Cup and if any kind of Arsenal information comes out. But please check it out on the link below, and I'll be back next week. Bye-bye.